Here's an idea. We live in the future. Just not the hoverboard one. Where are the flying cars? Where is my jetpack? And why on earth do I still need to eat and sleep? How have we not solved these problems yet? Demands and questions made of science by people wondering when the future will arrive. A common lament, this is not the future I was promised. It's tough to say anything was promised. Most signifiers for the future, even a dystopic one, come from a generally Western complex of media that can sometimes make it seem like we're standing on the great precipice of destiny. But really, progress is slow and mundane and woefully irregular. I mean, we all know the William Gibson quote. We are living in some future. I mean, I guess insofar as we're not stuck in some perpetual present, but that is a much lengthier conversation. The question is whether we are living in the future. And I think the answer to this is yes, even given the regrettable absence of hoverboards. And no, this does not count. I'm talking about this. For one thing, if having a pocket computer that can play games, contact your friends and family, access practically infinite knowledge, and sound the club horn whenever you want isn't future enough for you, I don't even know how to deal. But I think there's more to living in the future than just available technology. In my mind, one lives in the future when there is significantly distributed and operable opportunity and a wide understanding that allows one to plan for and effectively construct an even further future, which is a thing we're bad at. It's why it took us so long to stop wandering around just hoping to find food. It's why credit cards exist and are so successful / awful. Planning ahead is hard, but lots of us think lots about it and try valiantly to do it, socially, environmentally, economically, culturally, scientifically, and we always have, which is potentially why this framework is super boring. If living in the future means being able to effectively construct one, that means we've maybe been living in the future for a while. Which I think we have. As we've slowly figured out how and why to construct and work towards eventualities as a species, a set of cultures, and a global community, we've gotten better at it. We've maybe always lived in the future. The question is, when do we become good at it? Not quite sure we're there yet. The future's arrival then isn't signified by some piece of technology or scientific capability, but by a set of attitudes and practices of which that scientific capability might be one result. And I guess when you put it that way, it might sound kind of obvious. Another and maybe less obvious question is what happens to that perpetual present that we may or may not be stuck in when we get better and better at constructing our own futures? I don't mean this in that vaguely spiritual sense of you gotta just like live in the present, man, but more like what happens, if anything, to now when it is increasingly fodder for later. There are, of course, degrees and domains to this question. In science and economics, can one ever be too concerned about the future of things? Is one ever not building on past knowledge and hoping their knowledge will eventually be built upon? The practice of all of these things, and history and art and politics, is all about work done now so it may be extended or responded to later. But where constant recording, documentation, reporting, analysis, and responding were at one point clinical practices reserved not exclusively, though mostly, for institutional spaces, distributed technology and an understanding of what it can be used to do has made those things part of the everyday process of living for so many people, their personal and social lives, relationships, and pastimes. And okay, stipulated, for a while now, you could have been the type of person to obsessively document and catalog their life, but today, that's less of a type of person and more of just a thing people do. And I think it goes without saying, but in case you're new here, I will say it anyways, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. Of course, there are bad uses of any technology, but at this point, I hope we are bored to death of non-nuanced griping about personal experiences of the world that involve devices. But for all of the red-faced frustration that it causes, the griping does imply something interesting, that for those who gripe, something is happening to now. Not the global now of our present cultural historical moment, though something is definitely happening to that, but the personal individual nows of the people who are self-tracking, tweeting, and taking Instagrams instead of living in the moment or whatever. That gripe, it seems, is that the precious now is deconstructed or disrespected, that our experience of it is somehow ruined in the presence of sharing, documentation, or editorialization empowered by the network. We talked a little bit about this in our mobile phones versus reality episode. When you're at a concert taking a photo, are you really experiencing it? And that is something that only the person taking the photo can answer. Either way, correct or not, this moment does change based upon the chosen method of experience. It must, otherwise this conversation wouldn't happen. Maybe it's that the practice of documenting and sharing creates a separate, concurrent now. Not a better or worse one, just another one. Maybe it's that there is the physical now happening at the concert or the dinner party, and then there is the now in images represented by photos and text. And some people, believing those two nows to be mutually exclusive, see the first as being cheapened for what is ostensibly the ability to return to it later at some future point, in turning now into later. And so maybe that's what all of this is, the collecting and collating of our present experiences so that we may return to them in the future. And through that, the construction of some potentially upsetting dichotomy of the present. But I don't know, I mean, I rarely return to my Instagrams, tweets, Vines, videos. Is it instead that I'm doing it for the attention? Maybe. But I mean, my impulse to post this photo from the Country Music Hall of Fame wasn't, whoa, look where I am. It was more like, here's this thing for you, if you want it. Maybe what happens to now, in the face of distributed documentation and editorialization, is that instead of creating a dichotomy or several distinct nows, the resolution of the one big now is increased. We get to see all, or I guess much more, of what now is. A multiverse of all of the actually possible nows. And that in the eyes of the gripers, that now is less so, because it is so often coupled with here, a private kind of local experience spoiled by hyperconnection. If true, this could be one explanation for FOMO, or the fear of missing out. With now at such a high resolution, the pressure to navigate to the correct or most fulfilling sector is potentially really high. From this perspective, now isn't a time and a place, but a choice and an imperative. Which maybe it always was, but today, right now also has an audience. What do you guys think? How do you determine whether or not we live in the future? And has the idea of now changed in response to available technology? Let us know in the comments, and of course, please subscribe. She loves you, good comments, more than me. Let's see what you guys had to say about country music. First things first, I talked with Peter over at GoVerbaNoun about Idea Channel and creativity and educational content on the internet, and he just published the interview in 3 20-minute long segments, so we'll put links to that in the doobly-doo if you want to check it out, which you should. It's I had a lot of fun. And second, I am going to be getting on a plane in about 36 hours to go to Phoenix, so I hope to see some of you at Comicon this weekend. We'll put links to information about the meetup that I'm going to be doing with Joe Hansen from It's Okay to Be Smart and Jamin from Game Show, and also the panel that we're going to be doing on Saturday evening. So yeah, links to that stuff down there. Okay, on to comments. So Ace of Swords on the subreddit talks about how catharsis is maybe an important factor of enjoying sad country music, but that aspiration is also a big part of the general enjoyment of music. And this makes me think about stuff that like the Someday 42 and Jake Doctor wrote about how the kind of message that country music is putting together might be one that you don't want to aspire to, that you actually want to actively avoid, or an aspiration for something that doesn't really exist because, you know, in modern America, when 1% to 3% of people could be considered farmers or people who work the land, this message, this life of being like a salt of the earth kind of person that popular country music sells, it's kind of a simulacra. Like it doesn't really exist, and so that leads to some very strange sort of the strange creations of meaning. Hogs and Davis on the subreddit talked a little bit about the rap and country exclusion that is popular when you ask people what kinds of music they like. That it's popular, or maybe it was at one point more popular than it is now, to say that, oh, you know, I like all kinds of music except rap and country. And this is something that I actually wrote a little bit about on Tumblr, so I'll put a link to that in the doobly-doo. But the other thing that came up that like John Ono and a bunch of other people brought up is the idea of classicism, that there is a kind of classicist attitude towards country music, and that it is seen as a low music, which I think is really interesting, and I think has, I think has some relationship to this topic of how people view themselves as enjoyers of certain kinds of music, and the reason why people might say they don't like rap or country. Keith Buxton wrote a comment about how the meaning of something is very, very much connected to its roots, and that you can't have this full meaning or understanding of it unless it has a connection to where it came from. Whereas Sescape, whose name I'm probably destroying, so I'm sorry, sort of talks about wanting to enjoy certain kinds of music, country music among them, by divorcing it from its roots, because the roots are what are unattractive about it. And so there were a lot of really great conversations in the comments, both on YouTube and on the subreddit, about sort of navigating this tension here between wanting to like something but knowing where it came from and maybe being excited or not about that. John, we were making sure that you were paying attention. That is a lie. This is embarrassing. We all feel very bad and kind of dumb. Sean the Original, challenge accepted. I hope you brought your unicorn. Song number 1, Casey Musgraves, Biscuits. Song number 2, Sturgill Simpson's Voices. Song number 3, Alison Krause's Outside Looking In. Song number 4, Charlie Daniels' Devil Goes Down to Georgia. When the Devil Goes, I always forget what the actual title of it is. And song number 5, Johnny Cash's Ain't No Grave, which, I mean, like, contains religious imagery, so you probably should have said no religious things. So we'll go with Folsom Prison Blues, which has a gun in it, so which is another thing that you probably should have put on the list. So we'll say Get Rhythm when you get the blues and your unicorn. ZX Jacko and SR Pilhar both write really, really great comments about the idea of whether or not the present or the future changes the meaning of the past, and sort of pull in some ideas about genre theory and how we make meaning. So we'll put links to these and all of the other comments in the doobly-doo. This week's episode was brought to you by the hard work of these heartbreakers by the number. We have a Facebook and IRC and a subreddit, links in the doobly-doo. And the tweet of the week comes from Dr. Fumet, who points us towards Taylor and Francis's 3 collections of papers about comic books and graphic novels that are up until the end of August, I think it is. And I took a look at some of these this morning and they look super rad, so I'm so excited that these are available and they are free, so check them out. It looks great. And hey, in case you were wondering, this episode of Idea Channel was brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is an easy way to create a website, blog, or online store for you and your ideas. Squarespace features user-friendly interface, custom templates, and 24/7 customer support. To try Squarespace, go to squarespace.com/Idea Channel for a special offer. Squarespace. Build it beautiful.